Well, hey, I'm here with Zarek Drozda from Data Science for Everyone. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Great, thanks. Uh, so, first off, what sparked your interest or your curiosity in the field of AI, the field of data science?
It's a great question. So I give you a little personal background.
Yeah.
My family is mostly from Youngstown, Ohio. If you know anything about Youngstown, it is the exemplar of the steel mill era
Mm-hmm.
decline in America, right? It is the symbolic epitome of the Rust Belt.
Yeah.
Um, Most of my family's from there. Both my parents they met and married there. I then had, after several moves and relocations while I was growing up, landed in Silicon Valley, where I went to high school.
Oh, wow.
The gap between those two locations, as you might imagine, was rather extreme.
Yeah.
I think traveling back and forth just for like Thanksgiving or Christmas or holidays was like traveling between two worlds.
Sure.
It saw an immense difference in those communities between what in one place was dealing with the decline of one industry where they had maybe over specialized and frankly was a community left behind and forgotten.
Sure.
Compared to the greatest wealth engine that the United States has seen in the past century.
Sure.
And I think that gap really motivated me to jump into this work because I saw immediately that there was a need for, it's cliche, but like bridging the digital divide.
Sure.
But the digital divide is becoming much more extreme now, right? And we risk running into an even further significant gap. If we don't make critical investments to ensure that that doesn't happen. AI is growing exponentially. The amount of data in the world is growing exponentially. And I saw that there's a really clear need to ensure that everyone's going to be able to participate in the digital frontier that we're all encountering.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, um, I can't imagine that sort of there's almost a sort of relic of the past and then this promise of the future sort of dichotomy there. That's very interesting. I
Well, it's even the conversations between people within those communities. It's
Yeah.
like two ships passing in the night.
Interesting.
And this might be reaching, but I think it's not a hard argument to make that there is a contributing cause of political polarization today based on the significant differences of background knowledge, participation, and education of emerging technologies that separates our rural and urban communities, that frankly separates somewhere like Indianapolis from San Francisco. Right. And I think the more that we can do to close that gap and to show that all these communities are part of this, digital revolution that we're all responding to in different ways, I think that'll be critical.
Well, that leads us straight into your organization's called Data Science for Everyone. So tell me a little bit more about your organization and how you're working towards bridging this divide for everyone.
Yes. So Data Science for Everyone, we're a national initiative based at the University of Chicago. We were set up in 2019 following the release of a viral Freakonomics podcast. I got the chance to work really closely with Steve Levitt, who is one of the co-authors of Freakonomics, both the books and the podcast. And he was setting up a social impact lab at the university several years back. And this was one of the first projects we undertook. Levitt literally came into our lab office one morning, frustrated after doing math homework with his daughter, finding that the content that they were working through at night did not relate at all to any emerging careers or jobs that he knew of as an economist, did not relate to the skills and the knowledge that is necessary in the field of economics as an academic researcher, and frankly was just not serving most students. And I think this is likely the case in a lot of the different K-12 subject areas, is that there is content that could be tweaked or modified or enlivened with a either delivery with or a focus on emerging technologies like big data, looking at data sets across units or subject areas, and AI tools. And so I think it'll be so critical to create those authentic modern experiences for students.
Sure.
And that's what our group is trying to do. Our work divides into 4 core areas. Data Science for Everyone works on policy advocacy, growing awareness for data science and literacy education as a basic right for all students, centralizing classroom resources. And so we scour the web and work with a lot of content curriculum providers to try to aggregate anything that's been built for K-12 teachers all in one place, and then a lot of community building. So we create spaces for teachers, policymakers, higher education faculty to work on these issues together. Over the past 3 years, so if you looked at the state map in 2019, there were 0 states with data science programs. As of today, there are 19 states that have something on the books for a data science education program. A lot of that is in mathematics. Some of it is in computer science. Some of it is in career technical education. We want to see more social studies, so tech ethics and the exploration of those issues.
Sure.
But we've grown very fast, and I highlight that progress not to brag, but to rather put a different spin on a really dark time. During the pandemic, a lot of school systems were reeling with a number of different challenges, right, for their students, for their teachers, for families that they were serving. And I often try to point people towards the innovation that was also happening during that period. It's a rough silver lining, but it is a silver lining that in combination with forced kind of technology integration in schools and states and other districts were able to work on creating modern experiences because of all the change and the froth that the pandemic brought. And so I think we saw acceleration that then got us ready for this AI moment. All that work was before ChatGPT, and we've only seen it accelerate since. And so we know that there's a lot more work to do, but very optimistic for where this will go in the near future.
Does your so obviously there's you mentioned ChatGPT. It's all anyone can ever talk about is generative AI right now, and there's been a lot of conversation about the data sets that are fed to AI. And do you see there being any major challenges that we're facing now, or major challenges that you expect us to face soon with generative AI and really just like you said, like big data?
So there are countless challenges relates to ethical use of potential bias in AI models, the issues of whether this model can generalize or not to the problem or the context that you're working in. There's an old data science adage, garbage in, garbage out. If the data that's going into your AI model is rife with replicating racial discrimination that has been picked up and measured by the internet. If it has emission biases, right, that there's people or identities or just important variables that are missing from your analysis, that will affect your AI output. If your AI tool is meant to give you nice sounding language back, you should expect nice sounding language and nothing else. And for students to build a enduring and confident framework to analyze these tools and to decipher and critically question the next technology, we think that they need to know at least a little bit about what's going on under the hood of these tools. And to build that in existing K-12 subjects where all students already take courses, because we think it'll be that critical for everyone to know by the time they graduate.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the future of learners interacting with data, like you said, under the hood, getting to know how these tools work. It sounds like you have some real optimism about the future of these tools as people become more versed with them and get to understand them more.
So I think the national debates on banning or proselytizing ChatGPT or other LLMs is a distraction from the real need, which is that we are entering the beginning of a global talent race right now on AI and these other emerging technologies. And it is not just a nice to have, but it is a equity imperative for bridging the digital divide, ensuring that everyone across the country can participate equally, regardless of the community they come from, or who or how they identify,
Yeah.
and that they are prepared to take our country, into the future rather
Mhm.
than responding to the future that only a
Mm.
few people are creating.
Yeah.
And I think that is the mandate that we're trying to address, and trying to cultivate.
Yeah.
And we're trying to build ownership with state and district leaders and policymakers up and down the education sector, to share that mission,
Sure.
because it'll be, it's nice for me to say it. It's much more important for our country's education leaders who are making the decisions about what students will be learning next year or 3 years from now,
Mhm.
to have a deep enough understanding of the many challenges that
Right.
AI and other emerging technology tools bring us.
Yeah.
Um,
It's certainly complex subject matter, you
right.
know. Speaking as someone with an interest in this uh, fascinating, bonkers new technology, but I'm not someone with a computer science, data science background, and so what is data science for everyone working on right now to grow, like you said, like awareness of how things work, what things are, um, for up from people who are policymakers down to you know learners and students and young people.
So the first thing is research, and we are specifically looking at all the other countries around the world who are doing work and making really meaningful investments,
Mm.
in AI education and in data science education and computer science and the other emerging technology areas. And we found that other countries, are maybe earlier to this issue, but they are making more meaningful investments, moving at like 3 times the speed and achieving results much faster than the US system currently is.
Well.
And if you think about our position as a global economic leader,
Mhm.
or if you think about economic competitiveness implications or national
Mhm.
security implications, it is not enough for us to sit around and say this is a good idea. We need to make real investments, rethink models for teacher support, professional development, and training. Rethink models for how school leaders learn about new technologies and are able to
Sure.
translate them into policy decisions. It's not enough to train teachers. We have a whole system that needs to be upskilled and empowered to have the right frameworks to decipher AI, data science, cybersecurity, blockchain, whatever
Yeah.
the next emerging technology is going to be.
Sure.
Right. We had to create systems across the country that can work in partnership with school, district, and state leaders, to be able to tackle these things holistically rather than one by one,
Sure.
playing whack-a-mole with whatever the next hype cycle becomes. And so I think it's critical to build like a really deep understanding and also new processes to be able to adapt to these things. The next thing that DS3 is working on, in that vein, um, this is the reason why we are putting together a national process to build a new type of standards
Mm.
process for states and districts as
Sure.
they're approaching emerging technology. And so we're working really closely with NCTM, the Math Teachers Professional Associations, NSTA, Science, CSTA, Computer Science, NCSS, Social Studies, to look across subject areas in the K-12 content arena and find where in your existing school subjects could you be integrating learning about
Hmm.
AI, data,
Sure.
computing. It's a little bit hard sometimes to go tell a social studies teacher go code. That doesn't mean very much to them.
Yeah.
But if you're able to give them a data set about a unit that they have to teach next month, maybe it's economic fallout or opportunities from World War II,
Hmm.
or maybe it's a data set of U.S. capitals, and
Sure.
you're trying to use a different technique than the typical state song to get your students to learn geography and really grapple with some of those questions. Having a data set that aligns to your subject area is a venue to then teach about AI or
Sure.
coding or computational tools in context of existing subjects. And so we want to bring that out and make it explicit.
Sure.
We also think that the way education standards are typically developed is out of date.
Right.
AI tools like ChatGPT update every 10 weeks.
Oh, wow.
State standards update every 10 years.
Yeah.
Those timelines are not aligning to each other.
Sure.
And we need to figure out a way to create community-driven, consensus-based education expectations for our students that update over time, that are digital, that you have a process for qualified experts to propose amendments as the world shifts, and then have a system that's able to work with those content frameworks to be able to adopt them easily, and to have the right curricula, training resources, and other wraparound supports, in alignment with new content expectations as they run. And so I think rethinking the way that we develop state standards or Common Core or the next generation science standards, bringing a living document approach to this will be especially critical for this year, but also 5 or 10 years from now, when who knows how fast some of this stuff will be moving.
I'm curious what you think of the challenges. I mean, you mentioned bias earlier, and that's always a big conversation when it comes to the data sets that AI is built on, or even just statistical models are built on. So I wonder, what challenges do you think AI poses to, or what are the challenges for ethical and equitable use of AI? And I wonder how your work intersects with what the work that EdSafe AI and their SAFE framework is working on.
Yeah, so I think the short answer is, as we're building EdSafe in the framework for how to use AI responsibly and ethically, we need to ensure that students themselves are learning that exact same framework and that they are prepared to deal with, leverage, and appropriately utilize AI tools as they approach not only their own studies, but their college experience, their careers. And if they end up becoming builders of these tools one day, we better ensure that those values and a responsible and ethical approach to building these tools is built in early.
Yeah.
You can't start too late for those conversations. And I think some of the tension for banning or allowing ChatGPT would go away if we taught both teachers and students how to have a constructive conversation about potential ethical issues of AI, potential biases that the outputs are giving you, which tool you use for which purpose. ChatGPT cannot do accurate math calculations 100% of the time because it's a text-based model. It is leveraging patterns that it finds on the internet, but it is not a calculator on its own. You have to modify the tool in order to do that function. Same thing with coding. It can give you 70% accurate code. It's not giving you 100% accurate code because its mission is to give you text that resembles prior text, not other applications. And so students should have a strong, robust framework for how to ethically navigate and leverage AI. And I think EdSafe can come up with that answer. And then we have to do the work to integrate that into the curriculum. So we're not just focusing on today's builders, but also thinking about AI builders of tomorrow and AI users of tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, along those lines of, these AI users of tomorrow, what implications does your work and the questions surrounding this field, what implications are there from the policy perspective?
I think one of my concerns is that conversations at the federal level, so whether you're working in the House or the Senate, or you're hearing, the most recent executive order from the White House, they are focused on national security concerns and economic competitiveness as it relates to artificial intelligence. But then the investments that are recommended entirely relate to industry, national security, defense strategies. They are missing the talent
Hmm.
piece of the puzzle. And AI has kicked off a global talent race.
Hmm.
We are now competing with other countries to guarantee and or ensure long-term leadership on technologies that grow exponentially, if not faster.
Hmm.
And so what I am concerned about is that when future federal legislation comes up on education investments in the US, so that will be separated from conversations on the security or the economic implications of AI, because those two ideas are together. If the US wants to ensure leadership in the digital frontier, we have to be investing in our education sector like it matters, and investing in our teachers as if they are critical to the same mission that our service people in the armed forces are carrying out every day. The teaching profession for too long has been feminized, has been viewed as a less sexy career than doctors or
Sure.
lawyers or data scientists, and that should not be the case. Our country's educators are critical for ensuring long-term economic and long-term economic security as these new technologies vastly reshape economic structures, what individuals and companies are able to do, and the risk associated.
So you started to get into how you'd like to address these growing problems or these emerging problems. Um, so I'm while I'm basically asking what's the first step in doing this, uh, I'd like to ask it like if you could do or enact or create one thing at this moment around safe and equitable AI in education, what would you do?
I think we need to create a national talent surge into education for imparting emerging technology skills to our country's young people.
Hmm.
I think we need a World War II style and level
Sure.
of recruitment, upskilling, boot camps, and whatever else we need to get our country's teachers, their school leaders, and ultimately our students ready for the digital frontier.
Yeah.
Time is running out. And if we don't make these investments, we will quickly lose leadership in these technologies that are otherwise so critical for economic security, national security, and winning the future.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Zarek. This has been a great conversation. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking with you all.